Bail Me Out Production Studios in the beautiful state of Arkansas, you're listening to the Shattered Podcast with your host, D. Elias.
Today in my studio, I have Melissa Williams. Melissa, let's start by you telling me about your childhood.
It was chaotic. My mother was an addict. My grandmother was an alcoholic, and it was chaotic. We lived in a little 5-bedroom house, little 5-room house, the 5th house past the railroad tracks in Hayworth. And so my mom worked at the truck stop in Idabel for many years at night, where she was more interested in other things than raising her kids. My mom has been married several times, 7 pretty much at the most, and so that was 7 different chances that something could happen to a young girl. And so I was molested as a young girl, and it was hard for me. And when I told my mom, she didn't believe me. And so I just had got to the point to where there was no sense in telling, because she wasn't going to believe me.
Wow.
Those men provided her with drugs and somewhat stability that she called stability, but
What was her drug of choice?
methamphetamine.
Meth.
And so it was hard for my sister Jamie and I. We were moved around a lot. We never, in very crazy neighborhoods, we would live over in Briarcliff, or just not real stable places. And so.
And then your mom moved you to Houston?
She did. When I was young, when I was in the 1st grade, my sister was in the 3rd grade, she moved us to Houston with one of her husbands. And he was a strange character. He liked to dress up like a woman at nighttime. He would steal my sister and I's Barbies and duct tape them together with no clothes on, and just strange things like that. And she moved us to Houston, and then we started school, and my very first day of school, I ended up getting on the wrong school bus and ended up having to try to figure out at a 1st grader, 6 years old, how I was going to get home, and ended up walking about a half a mile to a little shabby house that we lived in. And so that's how that went.
And this stepdad did also molest you?
Yes. In my house, we were not taught about a woman and a man marriage.
Right.
We weren't taught about sex. It was always something that was gross to me because of what had happened to me.
Right, absolutely.
And I was taught at a young age that if you use your body as a woman, you can get something.
Right.
And because my mother did.
Mm-hmm.
She used herself to get what she wanted. And so as kids, if you see that, you grow up thinking that.
Right.
Which is opposite of the truth.
So your grandmother had had enough. She had seen enough.
She had seen enough. She had heard enough. And she said, "You're going to bring them kids home." So Mama didn't want us anyways. We was just in the way. But she brought us home. My sister Jamie, who we have the same mom but different dads, went to live with my great-grandma, and I went to live with my grandma. Now, my grandma was an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
She drank constantly. She did get up and go to work. She would try her very best to provide for us, or for me, and my sister and, great-grandma probably didn't live very far down the street from us, and so Mama would try her very best to take care of chicken houses during the day and And, she drank at night or on the weekends or whatever. And I can remember one particular instance where we were going to Dallas to pick up a car from my Uncle Ronnie had given her a car. And so they got drunk on the way up there. And here I am, 14, and she wasn't going to get us home. And so she was over in the passenger seat throwing up out the window, and I was 14 years old driving us from Dallas, Texas.
How much experience had you even had driving?
Well, she would take me down back roads when she would drink, and I'd get to drive
You were
down
the
back
chauffeur.
road. I was the chauffeur, but never on a interstate
Right.
highway.
Running 70 miles an hour.
Running 70 miles an hour. No, ma'am, never. But I made it, and I made us home. And
You had a guardian angel with you.
yeah, I did. But I loved my grandma. I loved my grandma like there was no other. Only because anything I would tell her, she would believe me.
Right.
She trusted me. And she loved me unconditional, and she didn't mind showing it. When I was young, my mama would tell me and my sister Jamie, if you guys wouldn't have been born, I could have been an airline stewardess. But my grandma would say the opposite. You're the love of my life. You're the reason I live. And to somebody that has been traumatized,
Right, absolutely.
that's what you need to hear. Is somebody loves you.
You need to feel loved.
You're not alone.
Right.
And so she did her very, very best.
And did you stay with your grandmother until you were 16?
I did. And when I was 16, I moved with a friend, and her sister lived in Valiant. And so I moved with her, and I would go back and forth to school in Hayworth because she was from Hayworth, but her sister lived in Valiant. And so I went to live with her and her sister, and, it was a stable home. But we would, do what kids do at 16. We'd drink after school or run around, and at 16 I ended up getting pregnant. And I knew that I couldn't take care of a baby. I didn't have any means to take care of a baby. Wasn't even out of high school. I knew I didn't have anybody help me take care of a baby. So I had an abortion when I was 16. When I told my mom, who I needed her to be with me, she wouldn't even take me. She just told me it was my responsibility. I needed to deal with that. So my sister Jamie took me to Oklahoma City, and because I was so far along, it took 2 days to complete the process. I think now that probably would be illegal, but then it was not.
Right.
And so I did it, and my sister brought me home, and that was that. Just never thought about it again. Like it never even happened. And years later is when I felt like I should deal with it.
Right.
But right then it just didn't happen.
You just kept it suppressed.
Yes, just didn't happen. And so after that, something clicked, and I said, I'm going to be different. Something has got to be different in my life. I'm not going to grow up, and I'm not going to end up like this. I'm going to be different. I knew I was smart in school. I didn't really have to study. I knew I was pretty smart. So I decided, back in 1993 is when I graduated high school, you could take senior English and junior English in the same year and graduate in the 11th grade. And so I did. I said, I'm graduating, I'm getting out of here. So that's what I did. So I graduated high school in the 11th grade, and I went to college at Southeastern, where my sister, Jamie, already was. And so when I left college in 1996, I came back, and I was going to do just one last, weekend with my family, and I was going to go, and I was going to be something, and I ended up getting pregnant again. Here I am, 18 years old, 19, and I'm pregnant again. back to the same situation I was at 16.
Right. Just getting your life started.
Yes. And so I decided I can't have another abortion. I've got to have this baby. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to figure it out. And so I did. I had Caden. He is my only son because after Caden was born, I had endometriosis really bad. And so they did a complete and full hysterectomy after Caden was born. And so he was born, and I thought, okay, what do I do now? I didn't know how to take care of a baby. Nobody ever told me that baby was going to keep me up all night. Nobody ever told me that baby was going to cry. And that, to me, got on my nerves. Nobody even ever showed me how.
Right.
So right from the get-go, there was not that bond there.
Right.
Between a mother and a son that should have been.
Right.
That now, going back, man, if I could do it again, I don't think that I would ever let him go.
Right.
And so.
And during that time, you called your mom.
I did.
To help you out.
To help me out. You know, I had Caden, and after Caden, I gained 73 pounds when I was pregnant. And after Caden was born, just immediately after, I dabbled with drugs and alcohol a little bit in high school just to fit in, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But never anything that was about to come. Because I became so addicted, IV using methamphetamines, to lose weight. Because I wasn't going to be big. Couldn't accept the way I was. And just automatically became just a huge addict.
So you originally decided to use meth just to drop the weight that you had gained while you were pregnant.
Just to drop the weight.
You had every intentions of just doing it a few times.
Just doing it and quit.
Right.
Doing it a few times and quit. You know, I didn't want to be a drug addict like my mom. I'd already seen that my whole life. You know, I didn't want to be that. But I didn't want to look like I looked either. You know.
Right. You just had no idea how addictive, how powerful meth is.
The grip of it that will take control of you before you even know it.
Right.
It's got you.
So your mom did come and get Caden.
She did. I called her. I was in a motel in Poto, Oklahoma, strung out. And I said, called her and I said, can you please come and get this baby? I don't know how to take care of him. I don't know what to do. And she said, sure, I'll be right there to get him. Now, before she could get there, Caden had pulled a curling iron off of the dresser and stuck it to his neck. And when she got there to get him, she accused me of burning him, which is far from the truth. So the next Monday morning, after she got him on a Friday, she served me with papers, guardianship of Caden due to instability and drug abuse.
So, and she is still very much active as a drug addict.
Very much active in addiction.
So she is a drug addict, and she's serving you for being a drug addict.
Yeah. The only thing that she had that I didn't have was my grandma. Because by this time, my grandma went to rehabilitation for alcohol, got herself clean.
She's sober.
She's sober. She's mama. She's doing all great. You know, she's fine. And so she had Mama, and she knew that as long as that baby was there, Mama would stay there and pay her bills.
Right.
And that was her main motive, not to help me, to help herself.
Right.
And I hated her. I hated her for allowing things to happen to me when I was a little kid.
Absolutely.
And I hated her that day. And I'm going to be honest and tell you, it's not hard for me. It is hard for me to hate her today.
Yeah.
Even though her life is totally different now. She lives in a nursing home because of the years of drug abuse in herself.
Took a toll on her health.
Took a toll on her. She lives in a nursing home in Miami, Oklahoma, where she has no family. and I haven't spoken to her. I've spoken to her on the phone a couple of times, but I have not seen her for 14 years.
Mm.
Just because there's a lot of hurt there.
Right.
She has apologized. And God says, to forgive. I can't be forgiven if I don't forgive. But it's hard.
Yes, it is.
It's hard.
How long was Caden with her before you were able to get him back?
Well, I pulled myself together and I said, you know what? In Poto, Oklahoma, I can't do this. So I called my sister Jamie, and I said, which lives in Texas. She's a school teacher by this time, and I said, Jamie, can I please come live with you? I'll get a job. I can do this. And she said, Missy, there's not going to be no drugs here. And I said, no, that's what I need away from. And she said, okay. So I went to live with my sister in Texas, got a job shortly after I got there, and I met a man, and he and I married. And shortly after we married, probably a week, I got an attorney, and I started going through the procedures of getting my kid back. And it took a little while because they at first granted me weekend visitation, so I'd have to drive from Dallas, pick him up. But now I'm clean and sober by this time,
Right.
not doing any drugs. And so I would drive from Dallas, and I'd pick him up, and I'd bring him back, and then, to my house and keep him for the weekend, and then I'd bring him back. So there was a lot of, traveling, but I was willing to do it.
Right.
And so she had Caden until he was 4.5. I got him back on Christmas Day in 2003 or 4, I believe. It was 2004. And so he was probably 5, almost 5, when I got him back. And when I got him back, it was hard. He didn't know me.
Right.
He had seen me and he had heard the word mama, but he didn't know me. And we didn't have that bond. And here I was ripping this baby away from everything he did know because he was mine.
A lot of people don't realize, I'll just throw this in, a bond between a mother and a child is not given at birth, it's earned.
That's right.
And so just because you're the mother or the father, that there is no bond there if you have not earned that.
No.
And so it is hard.
It is. He didn't trust me. He didn't want to be with me. In fact, the very first time that he ever came to stay with me on one of those weekend visits, I had to bring my Aunt Betty with me because he knew her,
Right.
So it was hard. But I was willing to do whatever it took to get my baby back.
And that's good because it can be very traumatizing to a child if you just throw them into a bunch of strangers.
Yeah, absolutely. He had no idea. Mm-hmm. But the man that I married didn't have any children. And when Caden came, it was hard. And he just didn't want to go through that. And so we divorced.
That's when you realized he didn't want children.
Right. And so we divorced shortly after that. And I'm living in Arlington. I'm managing this apartment complex. And I have this little boy. And we've started to create a bond. And everything is okay. It's going good. Mm-hmm. Struggling to make ends meet. But I'm getting there. And I meet my second husband. And Logan had no children either. He's younger than I. But he came in and took Caden like he was his own. He raised that kid. He loved him like he was his own. He didn't force himself onto him.
Right.
He let the bond build on its own. And it was just amazing because you wouldn't think someone like that with no children
Right.
would work that hard at making sure that this little boy felt comfortable. He knew the situation, but...
Which is exactly what Caden needed.
Exactly what Caden needed. He was sent from heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And so Logan and I married. We were married for almost 12 years. We ultimately moved from Arlington back to Oklahoma. Working, both of us, Logan's selling cars, and I'm running a finance company. We're living by the golf course in Idabel, and everything is good. raising Caden daily. Everything is good. Until in 2008, I fell and I hurt my back. And I started taking pain medicine. And I thought my life was out of control with methamphetamines. I had no idea what was about to come.
Well, the doctor prescribed you not one prescription, but how many?
5. I would get fentanyl patches. I would get Percocet. I would get oxycodone. I would get OxyContin, hydrocodone.
That just amazes me how a physician thinks that is okay to prescribe 5 different at one time.
At one time. On top of giving...
I mean, you didn't stand a chance.
None. On top of give you Xanaxes and muscle relaxers. And it was awful. I got to the point where I was taking 25 to 30 pills a day.
And they were all prescriptions?
All prescriptions.
From the same doctor?
Yes, with my name on them. And so it was horrible. I would pull my little son out of school early to go to buy me pills off the street because I would take all that it was prescribed to me. And then once those were gone...
You had to have more?
I had to have more. Because you could only get them ever so often. And so I had to have more. And so his life began to ravel out of control along with mine. Along with Logan's. And it just got to a point to where Logan said, Melissa...
Can't do it.
I just can't do this anymore. And it was hard. Because even though I'd never been shown how to love anybody, I sure did love him. And I thought that he would never leave me. Now, mind you, all these years, I never had a relationship with my dad. Never. I didn't know him as a young kid. I remember when I was probably 7, his mom and dad come over to our house in Oklahoma and said, oh, that's not Joe Vance's daughter. Let's go. And I never saw him again. And so when I was 16, I remember that he did come to my house in Hayworth, and he let me drive his truck for a couple hours, but it wasn't like he was my dad. It was just like he was a friend. Right. You know what I'm saying? But I wanted him. And I think the reason that I wanted to know him was because I wanted to know if his life was different than mine. Right. And if he could help me. Mm-hmm. You know, could I escape my situation and go be with him and his? But little did I know that he was struggling himself. Right. In and out of prison, you know, he was struggling himself. But while I was married to Logan, 2 girls reached out to me on Facebook and said, we saw your profile picture. It's your son, and he looks just like our dad. When we think that our dad is your dad. And I said, you've got the wrong one, because I've got one sister, and her name is Jamie, and that's all I've got. And they said, no, our dad is Joe Vance, and we've been told that that's your dad, and we have an older sister. And I thought, wow, all these years. Mm-hmm. So we began to cultivate this relationship over the telephone, talking, you know, ever so often, but nothing really came of it, you know. And then I separated from Logan, you know, I'm in addiction, heavy narcotic addiction. And I didn't really want a relationship with anybody except the ball of pills that I had. And so Logan decided he would leave. And he did.
And how old was your son at this time?
17. And so we moved to D. Queen, Caden and I. And mind you, you know, Caden's going back and forth to school in Hayworth, and he's driving from D. Queen to Hayworth every day. And I thought, well, I can't do that. So we moved back to Oklahoma, and I'm in addiction. I'm just trying to make ends meet. I'm just trying to get this kid out of high school and survive. Right. And then my grandma dies. And when my grandma died, I died. Part of me did. She was the only person that I thought ever loved me, because she's the only one that never left. And so, I wasn't able to get the pills like I used to get them. I could still get them from the doctor, but I didn't really have the finances to buy them off the street anymore, like when Logan and I were married, and which he knew nothing about, And so I had to do the only thing I knew to do, and that was methamphetamines once again.
Right. Most people do because buying hydros or opioids off the street is so expensive.
Yes.
And meth is way cheaper.
Cheaper.
And people can afford that.
From hurting my back, I received a settlement, and I spent $50,000 almost on pills off the street.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, at the time, that was your top priority.
That was the only priority. So when my grandma died, I spiraled out of control. I was IV using methamphetamines. I got down to 90 pounds. I was sick. Dad and I had started he got out of prison, and we'd started to kind of cultivate a relationship, somewhat. We were beginning to trust each other, beginning to know each other. And he said, I would stay gone for weeks at a time, but I would call in every 2 or 3 days just to make sure that they knew that I was still alive.
Right.
My son was living with Logan. He had, moved out of with me and in with Logan so he could finish high school and it'd be a stable place. And so one place where I was, one time I stayed a day too long and Dad found out where I was. And he called and he said, Melissa, I know that we've had a rocky relationship, but I'm not going to allow you to destroy your life. And so I said, all right, Dad. So Hattie, the very next day, came and picked me up at a drug house in Oklahoma and brought me to their house and fed me for a couple of days and said, okay, now you got to decide. Are you going to go to rehab? Because I'd tried a detox center once before and right back. And I said, yeah, I think I'm going to go. So I went to Teen Challenge in 2016.
Did you go to your son's graduation?
I did. So high that I don't even really remember being there. And he looked at me that day and he said, you might as well just not even come around anymore.
Which was your rock bottom at this point,
my rock
too.
bottom. You are an embarrassment to me. And that's one thing that I said when my son was little, that I would never embarrass him like my mama did me. That he would always have something nice to wear and that he wouldn't have to go through as a kid what I went through.
Absolutely.
But when he said that hit something inside of me that said, I can't do this anymore.
We never want to be an embarrassment for our children.
No. And so I went to Teen Challenge. It was one of the hardest things I ever did in my life. It's a hard program. It's a work-study program. And here I am, 40 years old. And, but it was the most amazing thing that I've ever did.
And that is a 15-month?
13-month.
13.
Faith-based recovery program where they engulf you with Jesus. Because a lot of times people that come and they don't even know who Jesus is.
Right.
I knew who Jesus was. Now, I didn't go to church as a young kid, really. In and out maybe with my aunt a few times, but not too much as an adult. I would try, but not too much. And so I didn't really ever have a relationship with Jesus. But I knew who he was. But when you go there, they want you to meet him. And so you're engulfed with Jesus.
At what point when you was at Teen Challenge did you realize you can do this?
I had been there about 5 months. Now, in before that time of 5 months, I was calling Dad and Hattie, I can't do this.
And they kept saying, yes, you can.
We're not coming to get you. And so I was there about 5 months. And I was sitting there one day, and, you pray for 30 minutes before breakfast and 30 minutes before lunch. So I was sitting there one day, and I said to myself, I'm tired of talking to myself, Lord, because that's all I feel like I'm doing. My son is not, by this point, really not too much still have anything to do with me. When I would call him, he was one-word answers. It wasn't like my relationship back with him was restored overnight because it didn't get tore apart overnight. And I said, I'm tired of talking to myself. I need you to help me because you say in your word. Because I started memorizing scripture and I started, getting his word into my heart. And I said, you said anybody who calls upon the name of the Lord. I know my sin's not too dirty. I know I haven't gone too far because you say in your word. And I just started spouting off this scripture and something filled my heart like I had never been felt before. And I knew from that day forward that I had received the Holy Spirit and that it was going to be okay and that I could do it. And I graduated Teen Challenge in 2017, April of 2017. And so after I graduated the program, you can have an option to stay on and work for the ministry. And that's what I did. So I stayed on and I worked. I was in Arkansas, and Pastor Jared called and said, we need a marketing director in Mississippi. Would you be willing to come? I didn't have anything to lose, so I said, yes, I'll come. So I went to Mississippi and worked for about 7 months there. And they came to me one day. They said, we have a center in Missouri that's struggling, and we think you're a perfect fit. Would you be willing to go? And I said, yeah, I'm willing. Whatever. At this point, I know this life is way better than the life I had before.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to try. And so I went to Missouri. And I was in Missouri for about 7 months as well. When I wanted to be near Dad. My grandma had already passed, and there's no relationship between me and my mom, and I'd started to have a relationship with my youngest sister on my dad's side that I didn't even know I had.
Right.
And we were building a relationship, and I would call Dad and Hattie and say, I just want to be near you. I want to just build on what we already, because at this point, I didn't really have one. And so one day, finally, Dad said, okay, I think you're ready. And so I've been back here about 5 months. And just the way the Lord worked it out, by me coming back here, the day I came back here, I got a job at Ash Grove, the cement plant and foreman. A good job. And I was able to, get a little place right beside Dad and Hattie, so I'm like 10 yards from them. And I just want to know him.
Right.
My son and I, our relationship is not what I would want it to be if I had a choice to choose. But it's better, and it's getting better.
Right.
Now that he knows that he can trust me, and that he can rely on me, and I'm going to be there.
Right.
And that he didn't have to worry anymore.
Right. You hang in there because it'll get better.
Yeah.
It'll just keep getting better.
Just keeps getting better.
Trust is something that you have to earn, and it takes a little time.
It does, especially for someone who has been hurt.
But I'm very proud that you and your dad found each other after all them years.
After all those years, I was 37 years old when the first time I laid eyes on him. And he has done everything but bend over backwards to try to tell me how sorry he is.
Right.
And how he had to live with the regret of saying that I wasn't his.
Yeah, that does bother him. He does live with that regret.
But I reassure him all the time, Dad, coming from somebody that's made a lot of mistakes too,
well,
I forgive.
None of us are perfect. So how long have you been sober?
I have been clean and sober 3 years. It was 3 years, March the 24th. I'm not going to say that I don't struggle. I don't really struggle with drugs so much as I could possibly struggle with alcohol, but because in Teen Challenge, you don't really have to search around to find Jesus. He's there all the time. He's working within that ministry. But when you're back out into the world, you have to look for him. Not really so much look for him, but quieten yourself enough to listen for him. Right. Because there's so much chaos going on that I find myself sometimes not being able to listen. And that's when I'll start to waver, and I'll get, fearful of, oh my God, I can't go back down this road. I just can't do this. Because that's my worst fear, is to now at 43 years old, ever go back to what I went through
Absolutely.
Before. And if I could say anything to anybody that still struggles, if you will just put one foot in front of the other and don't be afraid to fall. A lot of people think, oh my God, if I go back, then that's it. It's over. I've blown it. But, someone taught me a long time ago that if you fall 1 foot forward. That way you're one step closer to where you need to be when you get up. And so that has stuck with me through this time, is Melissa, just 1 foot in front of the other. And if you fall, the worst part is staying down. Get back up.
Absolutely.
And you can do it. And so I try every single day. And I try to just tell people my story and where you can come from. When I was in addiction with narcotics, I listened to a girl. Her name was Janie Burkett. She had been to Teen Challenge. And it was so funny how God took me to there that day to hear her story in the middle of addiction. And I was thinking, wow, man, if she can do it.
Yeah.
But years later, did I not know that my life would be exactly the same. I went to Teen Challenge and I graduated, and that that you can do it. And so it was just so strange how that happened, and how the Lord places us in particular places, from time to time.
The one thing I think of when I think of Teen Challenges for teenagers, at what age do they take?
Well, there is a Teen Challenge in every state in the United States. And in 15 different countries.
Oh, wow.
There are adolescent teen challenges, but we were the adult women's division of Arkansas, and we would take ladies 18 to 65.
Oh, wow. I did not realize that.
You can go to Teen Challenge up until you're 65. We had a 62-year-old lady in our Teen Challenge in Russellville. There was several 50-year-old ladies in the program and working just as hard as those 25-year-old ladies were. And there's adult men's centers. There's actually now they've opened up women and family centers where women can go with their children to be rehabilitated.
Right.
The Teen Challenge I went to, there are some that charge you a monthly fee to come. Of course, I didn't have any insurance. I didn't even have $1. And the program where I went is they ask you to fundraise on the weekends. That's how their ministry is funded, is by fundraising, by making and selling crosses. So if you ever see a couple girls standing out in front of Walmart or whatever.
I have bought them.
Yes. That's what they're doing, is they're paying their way and funding the ministry to have their lives radically changed.
So people who are struggling and they cannot financially seek the help, they can still seek help through Teen Challenge.
That's correct. They will not turn you away. They do ask for an induction fee, but if you don't have it, I've seen them not turn you away.
Because so many people do not have the funds.
They have nothing.
Right.
If you're in addiction, you've done pawned or sold everything you have.
And you've probably, the family members, that you've just drained them dry as well.
You've used up every resource that you had.
Right.
When I went to the program, Dad and Hattie are so funny. they asked for the induction fee, and Hattie said, we will pay it for her. But they weren't going to pay it all at one time because they didn't know if I was going to stay or leave
Right.
or what was going to happen. But they paid monthly payments to that teen challenge as long as I was there. And I was able, of course, to stay the whole time. And
Right.
and in the teen challenge that I went to, your induction fee of $1,000 that you pay is given back to you if you graduate the program.
Really?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, that's a good amount of money that you can use to start your new life.
I bought a car with it.
Wow.
The car I still have today.
Well, that is a great incentive.
Yeah. To finish the program, because you're going to have something once you get out.
Right.
To get started.
And you're going to need a car for a job, so that was
Absolutely.
perfect.
And the teen challenge that I went to, which is under the same pastor. Some teen challenges are under a different pastor, but the teen challenge I went to is under the same pastor. And not only did he have the Russellville Center, but he has 4 other centers. And once you're there for about 5-6 months, they raise you up to what's called an emerging leader, where you're responsible for you get to take out the fundraising crews, and they begin to pay you a little paycheck.
Wow.
It's only like $150 every 2 weeks, but you really don't have to buy anything while you're there. And so we had to do a budget, and because I'd never done a budget my whole life, not even when I was married. But he teaches you. He taught me how to do a budget. He taught me how to be responsible with. That's things that they teach you there.
Right.
Is because as addicts, you might have had that at a young age.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody might have taught you that, but you lost sight of it.
Right.
But they teach you that, how to manage that little $150 every 2 weeks. And a lot of times you save it. That way once you leave or graduate, you have that money as well. And so.
How many teen challenges are there in Arkansas?
In Arkansas, there is the Women's Center that I was at in Russellville. There is a Men's Center in Hot Springs. And that is the only 2 teen challenges that are in Arkansas. There are a couple of more small recovery centers, like faith-based, like the Butterfly Ranch, John 3:16 and 17 is for men and women. But I don't really know if it costs to go there or what their program is.
Right.
But as far as teen challenges and the teen challenge curriculum, because if your center is under the teen challenge, you have to follow the teen challenge curriculum. And their national office is in Springfield, Missouri. I lived right down from it when I lived in Springfield. And they, you go through 14 different studies of parenting and how to handle temptation and how to handle, resistance from, the outside, world if you find yourself back in it.
Right.
How do you know you're a Christian? A lot of people don't even know if they are or if they aren't. It teaches you about sex. They teach you that you don't have to use your body for anything other than what God has designed it to be.
Right.
And so.
Which has helped you due to your molestation as a child.
It did. I went through a course while I was in Teen Challenge, and it was a chain breaker course, and it was, it taught me how to forgive and let go.
Right.
When I was young, I wanted a basketball goal so bad. I was tall, 6 foot tall with red hair. I thought, I'm going to learn how to play basketball. It wasn't very popular then to be 6 foot tall and redheaded, but I wanted to play basketball. And I was in the 6th grade. And I, to this day, can remember doing something for that basketball goal that I would never do again. And you don't realize then what it does to your mind later on. It even affected my marriage to Logan. I never understood how he loved me like he did. I never really believed that he, did really. I mean, even though we were married for so long, there was some struggle within that marriage because of what I had been through.
Right.
Not because of anything that he was doing. Now, trust me, he had his own faults, but what I had been through.
Right.
You know, and so it was never a healthy marriage because I didn't know how to make it one.
Right.
I didn't really know what to do. Or just how to be. But today, I do. You know, or I say I do. I don't know. I'm not married, so I don't know if I do or not. But I do know that things for me today would be a lot different than things for me then.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
For sure.
So, thank you very much, Melissa, for coming. You've got an incredible story.
Thank you.
And I'm so thankful that you and Joe have
Yes.
and Hattie
Yeah.
have the best relationship that y'all have right now.
Yes, you know, they would come and visit me, and you know, Hattie and I are the same age. And my dad is a little older. But, you know, and people would say, oh, my God, your stepmom is so young looking, you know. And then, of course, you know, I had to say, well, we're the same age, you know. And then they became, Dad was really cool, you know. But anyway, it has been truly, I would have never imagined 3 or 4 years ago that I could have the relationship that I have today with them.
Right.
For sure.
And I'm sure your relationship with your son is going to get stronger and stronger.
Yes, it will continue. He's actually at the MEPS. He's going to the military.
Really?
He's
That's
about
awesome.
to graduate from Oklahoma State University. He graduates next month on the 10th. And he's going into the military after that.
That's awesome.
And I'm so proud of him. And there's not a day that goes by that I will not take. You know, he gets mad because I blow his phone up. But, you know, I text him how proud I am.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And how much I love you.
Yeah.
Don't ever, ever think that I don't love you.
Right.
Because even though the mistakes that I made, I do love you.
As he gets older, he'll realize that more and more.
Yeah, I think so. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Melissa.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, is that right?
That's it.